The sun set over the red hills of planet KR-217. Taehyun checked the air filters one last time before bed. He had been alone on this strange world for 6 months now. Earth was very far away. His job was simple: study the planet and see if humans could live here someday. Taehyun's home was a small metal building with thick walls. It had one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a room full of science tools. Outside, the world was harsh. The air was thin. The dirt was red like rust. Strange plants grew in the valleys, twisting toward the weak sunlight. Day 184, Taehyun said into his recorder. Found 3 new plant types today. No animals bigger than bugs yet. Weather stable. All systems working. He was tired. Each day felt the same as the one before. Wake up, check equipment, go outside in his protective suit, collect samples, come back, eat, sleep, repeat. Taehyun missed people. He missed real food. He missed the sound of rain on a roof. But he had volunteered for this mission. Earth needed new places to live. The pay was good. And he had always loved being alone, or so he thought. The alarm woke him at midnight. A sharp, high beeping that meant something was near the station. Taehyun jumped from his bed and ran to the control room. His heart beat fast. Computer, show outside cameras, he said. The screens lit up. At first he saw nothing. Just rocks and red dirt in the moonlight. Then something moved. It was low to the ground and moving slowly. Its body was long and covered in shiny scales. It had 4 legs and a tail. As it turned, Taehyun saw its face. Sharp teeth, pointed ears, and eyes. Intelligent eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. What are you? Taehyun whispered. The creature looked like the dragons from old Earth stories. But it was real, and it was looking right at the camera, as if it knew Taehyun was watching. Taehyun checked his science books. Nothing like this was supposed to be on KR-217. The planet was thought to have only small life forms. Bugs, plants, maybe some fish in the far lakes. Not this, not something that looked smart. The dragon creature sniffed the air. Then it did something that made Taehyun's skin feel cold. It called out. The sound was high and clear, like a bird, but different. It echoed across the empty land. And then from behind rocks and hills, more creatures appeared. 2 at first, then 5, then 10. They were different sizes. Some had brighter scales, some had longer tails, but they were all the same kind of animal. A pack, Taehyun said to himself. They hunt together. He watched as they gathered around the first one. They seemed to be talking in their own way, making sounds back and forth. The first dragon, bigger than the rest, looked again at the camera. Then it turned and walked away. The others followed. Taehyun let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His hands were shaking. Computer, send message to Earth Command, he said. I have found intelligent life on KR-217. Repeat, intelligent life. They look like small dragons. They move in groups. They communicate. Sending video now. Please advise. He knew it would take days for his message to reach Earth. Days more for an answer to come back. Until then, he was on his own. Taehyun didn't sleep that night. He watched the cameras and checked the station's defenses. The walls were strong. The doors were locked. But he felt afraid in a way he hadn't before. Not just for himself, but for what this meant. If these creatures were smart, if they could think and plan, then humans couldn't just take this planet. It already belonged to someone. Morning came slowly. Taehyun made a strong cup of coffee and looked at the night's recordings. The dragon creatures had not come back to the station. But they hadn't gone far. About half a mile away, they had made a camp of sorts. They had cleared an area and seemed to be building something with rocks and the strange local plants. They're staying, Taehyun said. But why here? Why now? He had been on the planet for 6 months. If these creatures lived here, why hadn't he seen them before? What had changed? Taehyun decided to learn more. He put on his protective suit and took a small camera. He would not go close to their camp, just near enough to watch safely. The air outside was cold and thin. The red sun was rising, casting long shadows across the land. Taehyun walked slowly, staying low and using rocks for cover. He didn't want to be seen. When he was about a quarter mile from their camp, he found a good hiding spot. A large rock with a flat top. He climbed up and lay on his stomach, using his camera to zoom in. What he saw amazed him. The creatures were building. Not just piling rocks, but making structures. Some looked like small houses. Others like storage areas. They worked together, moving materials and helping each other. And there were more of them now. At least 20. Some were clearly younger, with lighter-colored scales and smaller bodies. They played while the adults worked, chasing each other and practicing what looked like fighting moves. They're not just animals, Taehyun whispered to himself. They're people. Different, but people. As he watched, one of the adult dragons suddenly stopped working. It lifted its head and turned directly toward Taehyun's hiding place. It seemed to stare right at him, though he was sure he was well hidden. The dragon made a sharp sound. The others stopped what they were doing. Even the young ones froze. Then as one, they all looked toward Taehyun. They know I'm here, he realized with a shock. They can smell me or sense me somehow. Taehyun stayed very still. Running would only make things worse. The dragons watched him. He watched them back. Nobody moved. Then the largest dragon, the one he had seen first last night, stepped forward. It made a series of sounds that seemed like speech. It lifted its head high, showing its teeth. The message was clear even across species. This is our land. You are not welcome. Slowly, carefully, Taehyun backed away from the edge of the rock. When he was out of sight, he turned and walked quickly back to his station. Not running, but not wasting time either. Inside, with the doors locked behind him, Taehyun sent another message to Earth. The dragon creatures are building a settlement near my station. They work together. They communicate. They have young ones with them. They know I am here and they do not seem happy about it. I need instructions. What should I do? Again, he knew no answer would come soon. For now, he would watch and wait. He would not go outside again unless he had to, and he would prepare for whatever might happen next. That night, as Taehyun checked the cameras one last time before trying to sleep, he saw something strange. A small shape moving toward the station. It was one of the young dragons all alone. It moved with difficulty as if hurt. It came right up to the station door and scratched at it weakly. Then it collapsed. Taehyun stared at the screen. The small dragon wasn't moving. It seemed to be in pain. Every rule said he should stay inside. Every rule said no contact. But as he watched the small creature suffering, Taehyun knew he couldn't just let it die outside his door. This is probably a very bad idea, he said to himself as he put his suit back on and walked to the airlock. He had no way of knowing that this decision would change everything, not just for him, but for two species who had never meant to meet. Taehyun's hand shook as he opened the outer door of the airlock. The small dragon lay still on the ground. Its scales were a pale red, almost pink. It was much smaller than the adults, probably very young. Its eyes were closed and its breathing was fast and shallow. "Hey there, little one," Taehyun said softly. He knelt down and gently picked up the dragon. It was lighter than he expected, maybe the weight of a small cat. Its body was warm, much warmer than a human's. The young dragon opened its eyes. They were bright gold with black slits in the middle. It made a small, weak sound like a chirp. Taehyun carried it inside quickly. The airlock closed behind them with a hiss. He took off his helmet once the air was safe. "Let's see what's wrong with you," he said, carrying the dragon to his work table. He cleared away his papers and tools and laid the creature down carefully. Now in the light he could see the problem. One of the dragon's legs had a deep cut. A silvery liquid, blood he guessed, was leaking from the wound. The dragon tried to stand but fell back with a pained cry. Taehyun had medical training but only for humans. He didn't know if human medicine would help or hurt the dragon. But he had to try something. "Stay still," he told the dragon, not sure if it could understand. "I'm going to help you." He got his medical kit and cleaned the wound with water. The dragon watched him with those golden eyes but didn't try to bite or run away. It seemed to know he was trying to help. Taehyun put some antibiotic cream on the cut and wrapped it with a light bandage. The dragon chirped again, but softer this time. "You need a name," Taehyun said. "I'll call you Junho, that was my brother's name." Junho the dragon tilted his head as if thinking about the name. Then he made a sound that almost seemed like agreement. "You're smart, aren't you?" Taehyun said. "Much smarter than any animal on Earth." He made a small bed for Junho using a box and some soft cloth. He put a small dish of water next to it. He wasn't sure what the dragon ate, but he put out some dried fruit and some of his protein bars, broken into small pieces. "Rest now," he told Junho. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Taehyun went to bed but couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the adult dragons. Would they come looking for the young one? Would they attack the station? What would Earth Command say when they found out he had brought an alien life form inside? He got up several times to check on Junho. The young dragon was sleeping peacefully. Around midnight, Taehyun noticed that Junho had eaten some of the dried fruit but left the protein bars alone. "At least we know what you like to eat," Taehyun said with a small smile. In the morning, Taehyun woke to find his bed empty. For a moment he panicked. Had Junho escaped? Was he breaking things in the station? Then he felt something warm on his chest. Junho had climbed onto the bed during the night and was now curled up asleep on Taehyun's chest. The dragon's body rose and fell with each breath. He looked peaceful and much healthier than the night before. Taehyun lay very still, not wanting to wake the small creature. It was strange to have another living thing so close after months alone. Strange, but nice. When Junho finally woke up, he seemed much better. He could walk on his injured leg, though he still limped a little. He followed Taehyun around the station, curious about everything. He chirped at the computers and sniffed at the food packages. He seemed especially interested in Taehyun's collection of rock samples. "You like shiny things, huh?" Taehyun said, watching as Junho picked up a piece of quartz with his small clawed hands. The dragon turned the rock over, studying it from all angles. Taehyun tried to work, but it was hard with Junho exploring everything. He checked the cameras often, worried that the adult dragons might be coming for the young one. But the camp in the distance seemed quiet. Either they hadn't noticed Junho was missing or they didn't care. By afternoon, Taehyun had learned several things about his new guest. Junho loved fruit but wouldn't touch meat. He could climb walls using his claws. He was fascinated by anything that made light or sound, and he seemed to understand a lot of what Taehyun said, even if he couldn't talk back. "You're not just smart," Taehyun told him. "You're as smart as a human child." That night, Taehyun made another bed for Junho, bigger and more comfortable than the first. But again, the dragon ignored it. When Taehyun went to sleep, Junho climbed onto his chest and curled up there. "I guess this is your spot now," Taehyun said with a laugh. He gently stroked the dragon's back. The scales were smooth and warm. For 3 days, this was their routine. Junho got stronger each day. His wound was healing fast, much faster than a human's would. He ate more and explored the station with growing confidence. He even figured out how to open some of the cabinets and doors. Taehyun sent daily messages to Earth about Junho, including pictures and videos. He knew they wouldn't answer for days, but he wanted them to know everything. On the 4th night, Taehyun was woken by the alarm again. Something was outside the station. He carefully moved Junho off his chest and went to check the cameras. His heart nearly stopped. Outside the main door were 3 more young dragons, all about Junho's size. They were scratching at the door and making soft chirping sounds. "Friends of yours?" Taehyun asked Junho, who had followed him to the control room. Junho saw the other dragons on the screen and got very excited. He ran to the door and scratched at it, chirping loudly. Taehyun didn't know what to do. 1 small dragon was manageable, but 4? And what if these were a trick to get him to open the door so the adults could attack? But as he watched the young dragons on the screen, he saw they were alone. No adults in sight, and they looked scared, huddled together against the cold night. "I must be crazy," Taehyun muttered as he put on his suit again and went to the airlock. When he opened the door, the 3 young dragons looked up at him. They were different colors than Junho. One was deep red with gold spots, one was orange red, and one was dark red, almost black. They backed away a little when they saw Taehyun. But then Junho pushed past Taehyun's legs and ran to the other dragons. They greeted each other with happy chirps and small jumps. It was clear they knew each other well. Junho turned to Taehyun and made a sound that seemed to say, "These are my friends. Let them in." Taehyun sighed. "Come on then," he said, waving the dragons inside. The new dragons were more cautious than Junho had been. They stayed close together and watched Taehyun carefully. But when they saw how Junho trusted the human, they began to relax. Taehyun named them 2, Minjae for the one with gold spots, Daehyun for the orange one, and Sungho for the dark one. That night, Taehyun went to bed with 4 young dragons instead of 1. They all found places on his bed. Junho on his chest as usual, Minjae and Daehyun curled up by his feet, and Sungho on the pillow next to his head. As he drifted off to sleep, Taehyun wondered what the adult dragons were planning. Why were they sending their young ones to him? Was it a test, a gift, or something else entirely? He would soon find out. And when he did, nothing would ever be the same. A week had passed since Taehyun had taken in the 4 young dragons. His small station, once quiet and lonely, was now full of life and noise. Junho, Minjae, Daehyun, and Sungho ran around the rooms, chirping and playing. They knocked things over sometimes, but Taehyun didn't mind. He was just happy to have company. Each dragon had its own personality. Junho was the leader, always the first to try new things. Minjae was shy but very smart. Daehyun loved to climb and could often be found on top of cabinets. Sungho was the most curious, always poking his nose into Taehyun's work. "Careful with that," Taehyun said as Sungho sniffed at a soil sample. "That's important science stuff." Sungho looked up at him with those golden eyes, then carefully backed away from the sample. He seemed to understand. Taehyun had set up a special area for the dragons with soft blankets and toys he had made from spare parts. But the dragons rarely used it. They preferred to be near him, especially at night when they all piled onto his bed. Every day, Taehyun checked the cameras to see what the adult dragons were doing. Their camp was still there, but he never saw them searching for the young ones. It was strange. Why didn't they come looking for their children? "Do they not want you anymore?" Taehyun asked Junho one day. The young dragon just tilted his head and chirped. Taehyun's food supplies were going down faster now that he had 4 extra mouths to feed. The dragons ate mostly fruit and some of the local plants that Taehyun had found safe. He would need to go outside soon to collect more. On the 8th day, Taehyun put on his protective suit and prepared to go out. The dragons watched him with worried eyes. "I'll be back soon," he told them. "Stay inside and be good." But as he opened the airlock, all 4 dragons tried to follow him. "No, you have to stay here," Taehyun said, gently pushing them back. "It's not safe." Junho made a sad sound, but they all backed up. Taehyun closed the inner door and went outside. The air was cold and thin as always. Taehyun walked carefully, keeping an eye out for the adult dragons. He didn't want to meet them alone. He found a patch of the fruit-bearing plants about a quarter-mile from the station. As he picked the round purple fruits, he felt like he was being watched. He looked around but saw nothing. With his bag full of fruit, Taehyun headed back to the station. He was halfway there when he heard a sound behind him. He turned quickly. A large adult dragon stood on a rock watching him. It was bright red with gold markings, much bigger than the young ones. Its eyes were fixed on Taehyun. Taehyun froze. His heart beat fast. He didn't know what to do. Should he run? Should he stay still? The adult dragon jumped down from the rock and walked toward him slowly. It moved with grace, its long body low to the ground. It stopped about 10 feet away and sniffed the air. Then it did something surprising. It sat down on its back legs and tilted its head just like Junho did when he was curious. "Hello," Taehyun said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon made a low sound, not angry or threatening. It seemed to be studying him. Taehyun slowly reached into his bag and took out one of the purple fruits. He held it out to the dragon. The dragon looked at the fruit, then back at Taehyun. After a moment, it came closer. With a quick movement, it took the fruit from Taehyun's hand and ate it. "You like that, huh?" Taehyun said with a small smile. "Your children like it too." At the mention of children, the dragon's head snapped up. It made a series of sounds almost like it was asking a question. "Yes, your children," Taehyun said. "They're safe. They're at my station." The dragon came even closer. It sniffed Taehyun's suit carefully. Then it made a sound that Taehyun had heard before, the same chirp that Junho made when he was happy. "Do you want to see them?" Taehyun asked, pointing toward the station. The dragon looked where he was pointing, then back at him. It seemed to understand. It took a few steps in that direction, then looked back at Taehyun as if waiting for him to lead the way. Taehyun started walking toward the station, and the dragon followed. He couldn't believe what was happening. He was leading an adult alien dragon back to his home. Earth Command would think he was crazy. When they reached the station, Taehyun hesitated. Should he really let this large, powerful creature inside? What if it was a trick? What if it attacked him once they were inside? But something in the dragon's eyes made him trust it. It looked hopeful. Taehyun opened the outer door of the airlock. The dragon went in without fear. Taehyun followed and closed the door. The air cycled, and then the inner door opened. The 4 young dragons were waiting. When they saw the adult, they went wild with excitement. They ran to it, chirping and jumping. The adult made happy sounds too, touching each young one with its nose. "They missed you," Taehyun said, taking off his helmet. The adult dragon looked at him with new interest now that it could see his face. It came closer, sniffing his skin and hair. Taehyun stood very still, trying not to show fear. After a moment, the dragon backed up. It made a sound to the young ones, and they all lined up in front of it. Then, to Taehyun's surprise, the adult dragon bowed its head to him. "You're thanking me?" Taehyun asked. The dragon raised its head and looked at him with those intelligent eyes. It seemed to be saying yes. Taehyun bowed back. "You're welcome. They're wonderful." The adult dragon turned to leave, making sounds to the young ones, but none of them moved. They stayed where they were, looking back and forth between the adult and Taehyun. The adult made the sounds again, louder this time. The young ones chirped back but still didn't move. Junho even came over to Taehyun and leaned against his leg. The adult dragon seemed confused. It came back and sniffed the young ones, then sniffed Taehyun again. It made a different sound, softer this time. "I think they want to stay," Taehyun said. "Is that okay?" The adult dragon looked at him for a long time. Then it did something that shocked Taehyun. It sat down on the floor of the station as if it was staying too. "Wait, you want to stay as well?" Taehyun asked. The dragon made a sound that seemed like agreement. It looked around the station with interest, then back at Taehyun. "Well, I guess I have 5 dragons now," Taehyun said with a laugh. "I'll need to think of a name for you too." The adult dragon was female, Taehyun decided. She had a gentler look than he would expect from a male, and she was clearly the mother of at least some of the young ones. "I'll call you Ji-young," he said. "It means wise in my language." Ji-young the dragon seemed to like her name. She made a pleased sound and settled more comfortably on the floor. That night, Taehyun's bed was very crowded. The 4 young dragons took their usual spots, and Ji-young curled up on the floor next to the bed. Taehyun lay awake for a long time, thinking about how strange his life had become. He had come to this planet alone, expecting to find nothing but rocks and small plants. Now he was sharing his home with 5 intelligent alien dragons. What would Earth Command say when they found out? As he drifted off to sleep, Taehyun realized he didn't care what Earth Command thought. These dragons needed him, and he needed them. They were a family now, as strange as that seemed. In the morning, Taehyun woke to find Ji-young gone. For a moment, he thought she had changed her mind and left. But then he heard sounds from the main room of the station. He got up carefully, trying not to wake the young dragons, and went to see what was happening. Ji-young was at the door, looking out through the small window. She seemed worried. "What's wrong?" Taehyun asked, coming to stand beside her. Ji-young made an urgent sound and pointed her nose toward the window. Taehyun looked out. In the distance, he could see movement. Many adult dragons were coming toward the station. They moved with purpose, their bodies low to the ground like hunters. "Are they your friends?" Taehyun asked, his voice shaking a little. Ji-young made a sound that was clearly negative. She seemed afraid. "Not friends," Taehyun said. "Enemies." Ji-young nodded her head, a gesture she must have learned from watching him. Taehyun felt cold fear in his stomach. "Are they coming for the young ones? For you? For me?" Ji-young made a series of sounds and gestures that Taehyun couldn't fully understand. But he got the main idea. These dragons were dangerous. They were coming to the station, and they were not happy. "We need to prepare," Taehyun said, his mind racing. "We need to protect ourselves." Ji-young seemed to agree. She went to the young dragons and woke them with gentle nudges. They chirped sleepily but got up when they saw how serious she was. Taehyun checked the cameras again. The group of adult dragons was getting closer. He counted at least 10 of them. The one in front was very large, with dark red scales that looked almost black. It moved with confidence, like a leader. "The red dragon pack," Taehyun whispered. "They've come for blood." But he was wrong about one thing. They hadn't come for the young one's blood. They had come for his. Taehyun's hands shook as he watched the pack of adult dragons approach his station. They moved like soldiers in a tight group with the large black-red one in front. Their eyes glowed in the morning light. "What do we do?" Taehyun asked Ji-young. The mother dragon made a low sound and pushed the young ones behind her with her tail. Taehyun checked the station's defenses. The walls were strong, made to protect against storms and the planet's harsh weather. The doors were thick metal, but he had never planned for an attack by intelligent creatures. "Maybe they just want to talk," Taehyun said, trying to stay calm. "Maybe they're curious about me like you were." Ji-young shook her head. She made a series of sharp sounds that clearly meant danger. The young dragons huddled together, sensing the fear in the room. Junho came to Taehyun and pressed against his leg, looking up with worried eyes. "It's okay," Taehyun told him, though he wasn't sure if that was true. "I won't let anything happen to you." On the camera, Taehyun saw the dragon pack stop about 50 feet from the station. The leader raised its head and made a loud, harsh call that echoed across the red landscape. "It was a challenge, a demand. They want us to come out," Taehyun guessed. Ji-young nodded. She looked at Taehyun, then at the door, then back at him. She seemed to be asking what he wanted to do. Taehyun thought hard. If they stayed inside, the dragons might attack the station. They looked strong enough to break through eventually. But if they went outside, they would be exposed and vulnerable. "We need to face them," Taehyun decided. "But we need to be smart about it." He went to his equipment locker and took out a small device. It was a sound amplifier, designed to help him record quiet animal noises, but it could also make his voice louder. "I'll try to talk to them," he told Ji-young. "You stay with the young ones." Ji-young made an angry sound and stepped in front of him, blocking his way to the door. She shook her head firmly. "You want to come with me?" Taehyun asked. Ji-young nodded. She looked at the young dragons and made a series of soft sounds. They all chirped back and Junho stepped forward. "No," Taehyun said. "The young ones should stay inside where it's safe." But Ji-young seemed to have a different plan. She made more sounds to the young dragons and they all lined up behind her. She looked at Taehyun and nodded toward the door. "You want us all to go out together?" Taehyun asked, surprised. "All of us?" Ji-young nodded again. She made a gesture with her front leg, sweeping it to include everyone in the room. Then she stood tall and proud. Taehyun understood. They would face the pack as a group, as a family. It was a show of unity and strength. "Okay," he said. "Together." He put on his protective suit but left the helmet off. He wanted the other dragons to see his face, to know he was different but not afraid. Taehyun took a deep breath and opened the inner door of the airlock. Ji-young went in first, followed by the 4 young dragons. Taehyun came last. The outer door opened and they stepped out onto the red soil of the planet. The pack of dragons watched them come out. The leader's eyes narrowed when it saw Ji-young and the young ones with the human. It made a sharp, angry sound. Ji-young answered with a sound of her own, just as sharp. She stood tall next to Taehyun, her head held high. The leader dragon stepped forward. It was bigger than Ji-young, with muscles that showed under its dark scales. It looked at Taehyun with eyes full of hate. Taehyun turned on his sound amplifier. "Hello," he said, his voice carrying across the open space. "I am Taehyun. I come from Earth. I mean no harm to you or your world." The leader dragon didn't seem impressed. It made a series of harsh sounds to Ji-young, who answered back just as fiercely. They seemed to be arguing. The young dragons pressed closer to Taehyun, clearly scared of the big leader. Junho even climbed up Taehyun's leg and perched on his shoulder, something he had never done before. The leader saw this and roared, a sound so loud that Taehyun felt it in his chest. The other pack dragons moved forward, forming a half circle around Taehyun's group. "We're surrounded," Taehyun realized. He looked for a way out, but there was none. They were trapped between the pack and the station. The leader dragon stepped closer, its teeth showing in what looked like a smile. But not a friendly one. It was the smile of a predator that had caught its prey. Ji-young moved in front of Taehyun, her body tense and ready to fight. She made a warning sound, low and dangerous. The leader wasn't scared. It kept coming, its eyes fixed on Taehyun. It clearly saw the human as the enemy, the one to attack first. Taehyun's mind raced. He had no weapons. The station was too far to run back to now, and even if they got inside, the pack could break in eventually. "Wait," Taehyun said, his voice still amplified. "Please, I don't understand why you're angry. I've taken care of these young ones. I've helped them. I'm a friend." The leader dragon paused, seeming surprised that the human could speak. It looked at Ji-young, then at the young dragons, then back at Taehyun. Ji-young took the chance to speak. She made a long series of sounds, pointing with her nose at Taehyun, then at the young dragons, then at the station. She seemed to be explaining something. The leader listened, its head tilted. The other pack dragons stayed where they were, watching and waiting. When Ji-young finished, the leader was quiet for a moment. Then it made a sound that seemed like a question. Ji-young nodded and turned to Taehyun. She nudged him gently with her nose, then pointed to the young dragons. "You want me to show how I care for them?" Taehyun guessed. Ji-young nodded again. Taehyun knelt down and the young dragons came to him right away. They chirped happily and rubbed against him. clearly showing their trust and affection. Junho, still on his shoulder, nuzzled his cheek. The leader dragon watched this with narrowed eyes. It made another sound to Ji-young. Ji-young answered, then turned to Taehyun again. She pointed to the station with her nose. "You want to show them inside?" Taehyun asked. Ji-young nodded. Taehyun wasn't sure if letting a pack of angry dragons into his station was a good idea. But he trusted Ji-young, and he didn't see many other options. "Okay," he said. "They can come in. But just the leader, not all of them." Ji-young seemed to agree with this plan. She made sounds to the leader, who listened carefully. After a moment, the leader nodded. Taehyun led the way back to the station with Ji-young, the young dragons, and the leader following. The rest of the pack stayed outside, watching. Inside the station, the leader dragon looked around with great interest. It sniffed at everything, studying Taehyun's home and work. Taehyun showed it where the young dragons slept, the food he gave them, and the medical supplies he had used to help Junho when he was hurt. Ji-young added her own sounds, explaining things that Taehyun couldn't. The leader seemed most interested in Taehyun's research. It looked at his computer, his samples, and his notes with intelligent eyes. It wasn't just a wild animal. It understood what Taehyun was doing here. After seeing everything, the leader turned to Ji-young. They had a long conversation in their dragon language with many sounds and gestures that Taehyun couldn't understand. Finally, the leader turned to Taehyun. It looked at him for a long time, its dark eyes unreadable. Then slowly it lowered its head in what looked like a bow. Taehyun was shocked. He looked at Ji-young, who nodded encouragingly. Taehyun bowed back to the leader. "Thank you," he said. "I'm glad we could talk instead of fight." The leader made a sound that might have been agreement. It looked at the young dragons one more time, then turned and walked to the door. Taehyun opened the airlock and the leader went outside. It made a loud call to the pack. The other dragons responded with calls of their own, then turned and began to walk away. The leader looked back at Taehyun one more time. It made a sound that seemed like a warning or a promise, then followed its pack. When they were gone, Taehyun let out a long breath. "What just happened?" he asked Ji-young. Ji-young made a series of sounds and gestures. She pointed to the young dragons, then to Taehyun, then made a motion like she was holding something precious. "They're letting me keep taking care of the young ones?" Taehyun guessed. Ji-young nodded. She made more sounds, pointing to herself, then to the station. "And you can stay too," Taehyun said. "We're all staying together." Ji-young nodded again. She seemed pleased, but also a little worried. She looked in the direction the pack had gone and made a soft sound. "They'll be back, won't they?" Taehyun asked. Ji-young nodded once more. She held up one front leg with the claws spread wide. 5 days? Taehyun guessed. "They'll be back in 5 days?" Ji-young confirmed this with a nod. She made more sounds and gestures, trying to explain something important. Taehyun watched carefully. "They want something from me," he said slowly. "Something to do with my research? With Earth?" Ji-young's eyes lit up. She nodded eagerly and made a sound of agreement. "I don't understand what they want yet," Taehyun said, "but we have 5 days to figure it out." He looked at the young dragons, who were playing again now that the danger was gone. They seemed happy and carefree. But Taehyun knew that something big was happening, something that would change his mission, his life, and maybe the future of 2 species. "We'll be ready when they come back," he promised Ji-young. "Whatever they want, we'll find a way to make peace." Ji-young made a sound that seemed hopeful. She looked at Taehyun with trust in her eyes. Taehyun smiled at her. "For now, let's just be glad they didn't come for blood after all." As if understanding his words, Junho climbed back onto Taehyun's shoulder and chirped happily. The other young dragons gathered around, their scales shining in the light. They were a strange family, 1 human and 5 dragons on a distant red planet. But somehow it felt right, and Taehyun knew he would do anything to protect them. 5 days passed quickly. Taehyun worked hard to understand what the dragon pack might want from him. He studied his research notes and talked with Ji-young as best he could. They were getting better at communicating with each other. Ji-young could now understand many of Taehyun's words, and he was learning to read her sounds and body language. "They want something about Earth," Taehyun said on the 4th night as they sat together in the main room. The young dragons were already asleep, piled together in a warm heap on Taehyun's bed. Ji-young made a sound of agreement. She pointed to the ceiling and made a flying motion with her front legs. "Space?" Taehyun asked. They want to go to space? To Earth? Ji-young shook her head. She made more gestures, pointing to the ground, then to herself and the young ones, then to the ceiling again. Taehyun thought hard. They want to leave this planet? All of you? Ji-young's eyes lit up. She nodded eagerly and made a happy chirp. But why? Taehyun asked. This is your home. Ji-young's face grew sad. She went to the window and looked out at the red landscape. She made a sweeping motion with her tail, then a downward movement with her front leg. The planet is dying? Taehyun guessed. Ji-young nodded. She made a series of soft, sad sounds. Taehyun went to his computer and pulled up his environmental data. He had been collecting information about KR-217's atmosphere, soil, and water for 6 months. The numbers told a clear story. You're right, he said softly. The air is getting thinner. The soil is losing nutrients. The water sources are drying up. He looked at Ji-young with new understanding. Your people are smart. You know your world is dying, and you want my help to find a new home? Ji-young made a sound of agreement. She looked at Taehyun with hope in her golden eyes. Taehyun sat down heavily in his chair. This was big, much bigger than his original mission. He was just supposed to study the planet, not help move an entire species to a new world. I don't know if I can do that, he told Ji-young honestly. That's a decision for Earth Command, not just me. And they might say no. Ji-young made a soft, pleading sound. She went to the room where the young dragons slept and looked at them, then back at Taehyun. The message was clear. If not for me, then for them. Taehyun felt a lump in his throat. In just a short time, he had come to love these dragons, especially the young ones. The thought of leaving them to die on a failing planet was unbearable. I'll try, he promised. When the pack comes tomorrow, I'll talk to them. I'll tell them I'll send a message to Earth, but I can't promise anything. Ji-young seemed to understand. She made a grateful sound and touched her nose to Taehyun's hand. That night, Taehyun couldn't sleep. He lay in bed with the young dragons curled around him, thinking about what he would say to Earth Command. How could he convince them to help an alien species? Would they even believe him? Morning came too soon. Taehyun got up carefully, trying not to wake the dragons. He made a simple breakfast and checked his equipment one last time. They're coming, Ji-young called from the window. She didn't use words, but Taehyun understood her meaning from her urgent sounds and gestures. Taehyun looked out. In the distance, he could see the dragon pack approaching. There were more of them now, at least 20. The large leader was in front as before. Let's go meet them, Taehyun said. He put on his suit but left the helmet off again. They went outside, Taehyun, Ji-young, and the 4 young dragons. They stood together in front of the station, waiting as the pack approached. The leader stopped a few feet away. It looked at Taehyun with those intelligent, dark eyes, then made a questioning sound. Ji-young answered, explaining what she and Taehyun had discussed. The leader listened carefully, sometimes looking at Taehyun as if to confirm what Ji-young was saying. When Ji-young finished, the leader was quiet for a moment. Then it turned to Taehyun and made a series of sounds. I'm sorry, Taehyun said. I don't understand your language yet. The leader seemed frustrated. It looked around, then pointed with its nose to a flat area of ground nearby. It went to the spot and began to draw in the dirt with its claws. Taehyun watched in amazement as the leader drew a simple but clear picture. It showed the planet, then many dragons, then what looked like a spaceship, then another planet. You want to leave on ships, Taehyun said. All of you. To a new planet, the leader nodded. It added to the drawing, showing the planet again with lines coming out of it like it was breaking apart. Your world is dying faster than I thought, Taehyun realized. How long do you have? The leader drew again, this time making a circle with lines inside it. It pointed to about a quarter of the circle. A quarter of a year? Taehyun guessed. 3 months? The leader nodded. It looked at Taehyun with what seemed like desperation in its eyes. Taehyun felt the weight of this moment. These intelligent creatures were asking for his help, for humanity's help, to save their entire species. It was a huge responsibility. I will send a message to Earth today, Taehyun said. I will tell them everything. About you, about your world, about what you need. I will ask them to send ships to help you. The leader made a sound that might have been thanks. It bowed its head to Taehyun, and the rest of the pack did the same. But I must be honest, Taehyun continued. I don't know if they will help. They might be afraid. They might not believe me. They might say it's too expensive or too dangerous. The leader looked up at this. It made a sharp sound and pointed to the young dragons with its nose. Then it drew again in the dirt, this time showing dragons and humans together working side by side. "You're offering an exchange," Taehyun said, understanding. "Your knowledge, your help, your friendship. In return for ours," the leader nodded. It drew one more thing, a simple picture of a dragon and a human holding hands. Taehyun felt tears in his eyes. This was first contact in the truest sense. Two intelligent species reaching out to each other across the gulf of different worlds, different bodies, different minds. But with the same hope, survival, peace, a future for their children. "I will do everything I can," Taehyun promised. "And while we wait for an answer from Earth, I will help you prepare. We can work together to make your remaining time here better. And I can teach you about humans, about Earth, so you'll be ready if when help comes." The leader made a sound of agreement. It turned to the pack and made a series of calls. The dragons responded with calls of their own, sounding hopeful and excited. Then the leader did something unexpected. It came forward and touched its nose gently to Taehyun's forehead. The touch was warm and felt like a blessing. The leader backed up and looked at Ji-young. It made a few sounds to her, and she answered with happy chirps. Then the leader turned and walked away, the pack following behind. "What did it say to you?" Taehyun asked Ji-young when they were alone again. Ji-young made gestures that Taehyun had come to understand meant stay and teach and friend. "You're staying with me," Taehyun said. "To help me understand your people better. To be a bridge between us," Ji-young nodded. She looked pleased with this role. Back inside the station, Taehyun sat down at his communication console. He took a deep breath and began to record the most important message of his life. "Earth Command, this is Research Station KR-2117. I have made contact with an intelligent species native to this planet. They call themselves..." He looked at Ji-young, who made the sound of her people. Taehyun tried to repeat it as best he could. "They are highly intelligent with their own language, culture, and technology. Their planet is dying. They have perhaps 3 months before conditions become unsurvivable for them. They are asking for our help to evacuate their population to a new world." Taehyun paused, knowing how crazy this must sound to the people back on Earth. But he had to make them understand. "I know this is an unprecedented request, but these beings are not just animals. They are people, different from us, but people nonetheless. They have children. They have hopes and fears. They have a future if we help them." He looked at the young dragons playing together on the floor of the station. Chuncho looked up and chirped happily at him. "I am sending all my research data, including videos of my interactions with them. Please review it carefully, and please respond as quickly as possible. Lives depend on it, not just mine, but an entire species." Taehyun ended the recording and sent the message along with all his data and videos. It would take days to reach Earth, and days more for a response to come back. All they could do now was wait and hope. That night, as Taehyun lay in bed with the young dragons asleep on his chest and Ji-young curled up nearby, he thought about the future. If Earth said yes, it would be the beginning of a new relationship between humans and dragons. If Earth said no, he pushed that thought away. He had to believe Earth would help. He had to believe in the better nature of his own species. "We'll find a way," he whispered to the sleeping dragons. "I promise." Outside, the red sun set on the dying planet. But inside the small station, hope lived on. Hope for a new beginning, for two species who had found each other just in time,